pans out as far as that's concerned. But thank you so much for making time to be on the show. As always, love it when you're part of the discussion. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24TV. Now, as we start the show, it's all about the awaited Sagana summit that happened, but still the question remains, which way from here? A president and deputy who seem to be indirectly addressing each other throughout the weekend, and a judiciary coming into this new month with confusion in the corridors of justice. We talk about the Sagana effect and the judiciary at crossroads on K24 this morning. But first, the newspaper headlines. Okay, let's see what we have as far as our dailies are concerned this morning. Start off with the front page of your PD. As you can see right there, front and center. Uhuru, trust my deputy at your own peril. President accuses Ruto of misleading Kenyans that BBI is bad and that he has the interest of the youth at heart, but all he wants is power. He's warned Mount Kenya residents that if they choose to listen to the misinformation, it is the region that will suffer. This story can be found on page 4 of your People Daily with all the details therein. Even as you look at that, right next to it, former PM Raila Odinga summons all ODM MCAs for talks on proposed laws. This can be found on page 5 of your PD as they get ready to hit the road and get that approval that's needed at county assembly levels. And you can find that story as well, once again, in a copy of your PD on page 5. Right at the top of that page, 1.2 million learners missing from school. Leaders from northern Kenya raised the alarm over the big number of children who failed to report back to class after the long COVID-19 break. This story is on page 8 of your People Daily. You can get the details of that particular story right there. Even as I get ready to sit for the national examinations next month, they really need to do their tally and find out what happened in terms of these 1.2 million learners. And that story is on page 8 of your PD. Don't forget, you can get it straight to your phone. The number that you dial is *550 *4#. Once again, it is *550 *4#. Dial that number and get yourself a copy of your PD straight to your phone. It's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. Let's look at the front page of the Standard now. They're titling it The Fight for the Youth. All these leaders trying to stake a claim to this essential demographic. Top leaders burn the midnight oil to win the minds and souls of the youth, a critical mass in electioneering. Uhuru and Raila separately met youth leaders at Sagana State Lodge and in Vihiga in Western Kenya, where they drummed up support for BBI and countered the hustler narrative spearheaded by Deputy President William Ruto. This is on page 6 of your Standard. You can get the details of that right there. The Standard also paying more attention to the BBI drive as Garissa backs constitutional changes. KANU Chairman Gideon Moi lobbies support for BBI among pastoral communities, saying the ward fund and increase in county allocations will have the positive impact that's needed. That story is on page 5 of your Standard. Further lower on that particular front page, schools dilemma as teachers reject cane. Dilemma for schools in disciplining of learners as opinion remains sharply divided on ministry's proposal to reintroduce corporal punishment banned in 2001. Of course, this has been a key issue in terms of how the ministry will deal with the unrest that has been seen in schools as reported back this year. And one of the proposals brought forth was reintroducing caning to try and quell this particular unrest. But as you can see at this particular point in time, still a lot of division as to whether they should go in that direction. And this story is on page 2 of your Standard with all the details therein. Let's look at what the nation has this morning. Pension shocker for civil servants. State workers have started feeling the pinch of contributory scheme that will see them shoulder a portion of the retirement benefits bill. The scheme will be implemented in 3 phases, starting with reductions of 2% this year until 2023, when workers will contribute 7.5% of their gross pay. The scheme was enacted in 2012 but met resistance from the unions. This is a story you can find on page 7 of your Daily Nation with all the details therein. As we scroll lower and talk about political debt, Uhuru owes me nothing, says Ruto. I'm defending the Jubilee track record from whichever place because we were elected jointly with the President Kenyatta, and that is a debt we have to pay. You can find the story in your copy of your Daily Nation with all the details of political debts or lack thereof in your copy of your Daily Nation. Look at the Star. Interesting headline right there as Speaker Muturi joins race to replace Uhuru. This will intensify dilemma in appointing a successor, and he's being packaged as Mount Kenya's presidential candidate, as you can see right there. This story can be found in your copy of your Star. It is the lead story this morning. And finally, from page of the Business Daily, top banks in tight race for 31 billion shilling pension deal. Those selected will keep retirement funds and assets for civil servants. and you can find that story on page 4 of your Business Daily. Also in your Business Daily, economy tipped to grow to 5%, with all the details of that this particular day. You can find that story as well in your copy of your Business Daily. And finally, fresh twist in Kidero's 68 million shilling fraud lawsuit. The intrigues of that particular case can be found in your copy of your Business Daily. That is on page 2, and that's what we have this morning as far as your dailies are concerned. So as you wake up this morning, that's what you're waking up to, but let's also set the stage as to what has been happening over the weekend. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta now says the Building Bridges initiative is aimed at propelling any leader to presidency come 2022. The president spoke today in a meeting with youth and women at Sagana State Lodge, urging them to desist from divisive politics, telling off the DP over his wheelbarrow politics, saying Kenyan youth need jobs and not wheelbarrows. This was a report done by Giverson Minor yesterday. Let's get the latest on that.
President Uhuru Kenyatta sustained his campaigns for the Building Bridges initiative in his second-day meeting with Mount Kenya leaders, the head of state addressing youth and women representatives from central Kenya.
Hebu tusalimiane tu pahali tulipo. Asanteni sana.
The president urged the youth to use their numerical strength to chart a bright future, warning against being misled to engage in divisive politics, noting that the Kenyan youth need jobs and not wheelbarrows.
We are saying, remove these dirty politics of 2022 and dividing people. Class, wewe ni tajiri, sijui wewe ni maskini. Na tuseme, as a country, if you want to be a leader, let us work together to ensure we put in place the right constitution, put in place the right policies to ensure that we end poverty. But poverty cannot be ended by handouts, my dear brothers and sisters. Yeah? It will never be ended by handouts. Yeah? Uhuru is here today, tomorrow is gone. So if you were dependent on me, saidiaing you and your wife and your child, sasa wakati nitakuwa hapa, utafanya namna gani? Na hujajipanga.
Speaking to over 600 youth leaders, the president noted that the BBI will come in handy in resolving the unemployment menace in the country.
BBI imekuwa safari. BBI sio kitu ambacho kilianza hivi hivi. Kuna wale ambao pia hata mimi wamenitangulia. People who will come into that next government who will ensure that the work that we are doing in Konza to ensure that we have our Silicon Savannah to provide high-quality jobs to young people in this country will continue.
In the closed-door meeting, the president told of Deputy President William Ruto for opposing BBI, saying he was involved in the process from day one. He also cautioned the youth against DP Ruto's hustler versus dynasty narrative, saying it was a danger to the country.
What this country requires is institutional change. It is a change of mindset. It is a change to liberate our people, their minds, to liberate them, to be able to be self-sufficient and independent. That is what the meaning of true independence is. Not to be dependents. And we cannot do that if we don't focus our minds.
We commit to remain united as the youth of Mount Kenya, following in the footsteps of our forefathers, and to speak with one voice at all times. We decree that we shall desist from divisive and toxic politics that threaten to fragment our unity as youth from Mount Kenya.
BBI sio kusaidia mtu yeyote kupata viti 2022. BBI ni ya kuleta mambo ya kusaidia vijana, maneno ya Youth Commission, youth wapate sauti, maneno ya tax holidays, youth waweze kufanya biashara, na maneno ingine yenye iko hapo ya kusaidia vijana. Sisi hayo ndio tunataka.
In the morning hours, the head of state graced the Catholic Church in Chaka town before inspecting Chaka market construction. Giverson Minor, Sagana Lodge, Nyeri County.
Thanks for that, Giverson. Of course, this was a report that Giverson filed yesterday, and of course, it was the makings of what some people might say now, all roads are clear, it's time to get BBI on the road with the region sufficiently galvanized, or is it? We'll have that discussion in studio. Joining me for this conversation this morning, Arnold Maleba, Public Policy Analyst. Good morning, Arnold.
Good morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Asante.
You know, for most people, they usually used to sing Arnold and Joy on a Tuesday. Yeah. So let me remind them, no, this is still a Monday. You know, it's a Monday morning, just in case you're looking at your calendar and wondering what happened. Joy Mdivo, Executive Director, East Africa Center for Law and Justice. Morning, Joy.
It could be Tuesday. You never know. It might be Tuesday somewhere in the world.
I don't want to shock someone and think that they missed a whole day. Just went past them. Of course, he'll also be joined by Dana Church, an advocate of the High Court, later on the show. Lots has been said from what happened in Sagana. Joy, very quickly from where you stand, is the region now sufficiently galvanized? Has the president done what he needs to do to get the region behind him as he moves forward with Sagana 3?
I think the railroad track has been laid for that. Whether or not it will be successful is something that time will tell. But you can tell that the president was very deliberate this time around. He was not leaving anything to chance. There were no side shows or allowed to be any side shows this time around. So if you had to have your say, you had your say prior to outside there, but when you came to the meeting, everybody trooped the colors. It was a very strong showing, and with the follow-up meetings subsequent, you can tell that it wasn't just the meeting for the quote-unquote big leaders, that there is also in mind the fact that this is also a battle for the youth. And so you saw a very targeted meeting for the youth as well. So I think the president is very much on course in trying to get the region behind him, and he has called his troops to order, and they mean business. If what we saw in Sagana this weekend is anything to go by, I think one of the headlines over the weekend was gloves are off. And that's what we're seeing from the president now. Of course, one would argue that if you think you're leading and you look behind and there's no one following, then you're simply taking a walk. That will be the big test as to whether Sagana has been successful or not. Will the people follow their leaders in the direction that the leaders have chosen to take? Is this a path that those who are behind them will follow through? But I think, as you said, as far as BBI is concerned, Firimbi mepigwa, the race is on, and this is hopefully the beginning of the end in terms of getting to a conclusion of what BBI is, so that we can move on to other things as a country.
Arnold, Firimbi mepigwa, as Joy is saying, and when you look at the headline on the front page of the PD, Uhuru, trust my deputy at your own peril. We also heard him speak about how the youth do not want wheelbarrows, they want jobs. There's only really one person who has been directly put together with the wheelbarrow narrative, and that, of course, is his deputy. How does he finish this term with his number two and an ever-increasing rift from what we are seeing?
Well, largely the year is going to be very interesting because if you look at where we are now, Joy has already said that we are looking at a bare knuckles engagement going forward. Proxy wars are over. There's been a lot of people using proxy wars. You hear somebody speak and you know too well this one is speaking on behalf of so-and-so. But somehow the so-and-so you expect to be speaking is not speaking. So the DP and the president have stopped being nice to each other. And you saw yesterday the DP responding almost immediately, and he spoke in English, same statement done in English, so that there is no mincing of words, and then in Kiswahili consistently. So there is a way it's coming off, and you realize that the two of them now are no longer. Long time ago, you will only hear that the president is angry with the deputy through other people. And there was no talking, but then the president is outrightly going out and he's addressing people, is directly dealing with them. Sometimes it will worry people. So, but going forward, of course, there are obvious reasons to why these two are at each other's neck. Number one, of course, at the core of everything else, even though we still do not understand where the rain started beating the two, because something beyond BBI must have happened before BBI came in as a substantive replacement. So before BBI, there is something that happened along the way. So the biggest problem in here is not just about the youth and not trusting my deputy at your own peril. Of course, these two had matching ties. They would put on matching shirts, matching suits. And there was a lot of bromance between the two of them for much of the first term. Then immediately the second term began. There was a little bit of falling out. So you realize that theirs was largely a a marriage of convenience. But BBI's problem, where the president is coming in, and this should not have started. From where I sit, I know that BBI per se is not a problem. It's just like a sessional paper we are trying to put together as a country. Much of a strategic plan we are trying to come up together with, or rather to come up with as a country, so that we reprioritize and reorient the country and Project Kenya to go towards success. But then here we are. When BBI started off, they synonymized BBI with 2022 politics. So when we first heard of BBI, it was like that tsunami that is coming to take care of 2022. That is the first problem. The second problem was the chest thumping that came with the people that were tasked with selling BBI. There was a lot of chest thumping. These guys were all over threatening people how BBI is a mighty river that people will not be able to stop. And there was a lot of threatening words. Sometimes when you threaten so much, even if it were a child, they will, speaking about a child, I've always wondered if Giverson has got a child called Tekason. So that threatening that threatening on a quite a period radicalized some people. There are a lot of people who are opposing BBI simply because they want to show the people who threatened them that they can actually stand against them. Then the other bit of BBI also came off as an anti-Ruto campaign. So when BBI showed up, it was fashioned, at least for those who sold it, it was against Ruto. So we are at a place where the things in BBI still make sense. Like, for example, how do I tell my mother in the village that I am opposed to BBI when she knows that, she even doesn't know that the boundaries review, for example, was going to happen anyway, and that if the constituency at home is actually now it's met a threshold where it's supposed to be split, it will automatically be split without even BBI. But my mother does not know that. She knows that BBI will ensure that my constituency at home is split into two, and we will get an extra 100 million shillings. It becomes so difficult for me to tell her that, okay, it doesn't make sense. So for those of us sometimes who sit here and do this analysis, it's sometimes looking at BBI, you are intellectually violently opposed to it, but politically you realize that there is what politics is, and that is where the problem between the president and the deputy president is. Because even as the president speaks about the youth, or rather you see the standard talking about the battle for the youth, for the last 8 years, for those of us who have worked in the youth sector, first of all, I was at the National Youth Council, and then I was the chairperson of the TNA Youth League. For most of my adult life, I have worked with and for the young people. I can tell you for the last 8 years, we have literally sung about issues to do with young people. But if there's a time when young people were totally ignored, was in the last 8 years. So we are at a place where now everybody is working. The DP wakes up and is talking about hustlers, and is talking about largely the young people. And now the president is going back to the young people and telling them, you don't deserve wheelbarrows, you deserve better jobs. He, in my opinion, he speaks well, he means well, but where has he been for the last 8 years? And you have been on this show when I told you that this is the first time in the last 2 decades when we do not have a person who is under 35 in the cabinet, except for those younger ones who sit there to write minutes. There's no, so the CSS are actually an appendage.
Arnold, let me get Dan Achach in on this one as well. Dan Achach, good morning, because I know Arnold with his sticky notes, he can go on this one. Dan Achach, an advocate of the High Court. Karibu Sana, welcome to the show. Even as you look at the politics of the day that might be, clouding what BBI is, there's also the question of just sheer honesty to what's going on, because even as the youth are told that, and immediately after this particular Sagana meeting, the youth came out and said that they're in full support of the document, a document that largely hasn't been, distributed for Kenyans to read. What really is going on? What are they supporting at this point?
Well, thank you, Jeff, for having me, and good morning to our viewers. Now, my honest view about Sagana is that I'll pick from where my colleague has left. I think it's a bit dishonest for both the president and the deputy to come now and start telling the youth what they need and what they should have, and yet they've been the leaders in this country for the last, since 2013. The narrative that we are now being told about the youth, that you need, one is saying you need wheelbarrows, the other one is saying you don't need wheelbarrows, you need this and that. What is it that the president and the deputy have done to these youth since 2013? And I think perhaps that's, as the youth and the young people of this country, perhaps that's where we need to start that discussion. Can we engage the two gentlemen and ask them, since 2013, and now we are in 2021. What is it that you've done for the youth? And for those that you've not done, why is it that it has not been done? And what is it that you are now going to do differently going forward that you are now giving us promises? How are the wheelbarrows going to help us? And why didn't we have those wheelbarrows since 2013? The president is promising something else. You need jobs. Why is it that we don't have those jobs? You've been the, I mean, you are the CEO of this country for the last 2 terms. And so for me, I think the discussion, the youth themselves need to set the agenda. We must stop now following the politicians blindly. Talking about the president's message in Sagana, I think for me, I look at it in 2 ways. The president is coming out, he's trying to deconstruct the notion that BBI is about 2022 elections. And the president has come out and said that, you see, previously we thought that the president was not really fully behind the BBI process because he was a bit quiet. We did not see him come out to really defend the BBI process. But for once now he's come out and told, especially the people from the mountain, that, look, this is my project and this project is meant to help you. I remember the president saying that if you pass the BBI, then even if a madman becomes the president in this country, you're okay, your interests are taken care of. And so we're seeing a president who's now coming out to say that this is my project. He's basically owning the project and trying to deconstruct the theory that perhaps BBI is a vehicle to get Honorable Raila to the presidency in 2022. Whether or not it was effective, I think time will tell.
Okay. Joy, I want to come to you on this one very quickly. We are inching closer to our break. We have 3 minutes before that. When Uhuru talks about his deputy and that if you trust him, you're doing that at your own peril, really, the blame does land at his doorstep, because the only reason this man is deputy president and not the 18 million other people who became his running mate is because Uhuru put him there. So what is he saying about his own leadership skills and the problem that he's put the country in at this point?
There's something that Arnold said that I think we should never forget, that it was a marriage of convenience to begin with. These were 2 people who are facing dire consequences with the ICC. One of the ways that they could fight it was by trying to stay in the court to clear the names. The other way that they could fight it was to come back and fight it politically. They rolled the dice, they came and fought politically, and that turned out to be what got the noose off their necks. So I think when they first came together, there was the necessity to trust each other because they were both facing the same peril. Now, one of the things that, again, Arnold has alluded to that the rest of us have kept wondering is when that stopped being the case and we ended up where we are now, where you could trust each other with your lives, literally, to a place where now, I mean, you almost cannot stand each other's sight. It's one of those things that only the 2 gentlemen can answer because it's them who know what happened between them. But something is very clear, that from when the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta was ending, you'll remember the famous interview by Vice Chair David Murathe when he was categorical and said, you know what, wait till we come back with Uhuru too. You will see a different Uhuru. And he's been proved right, because the person we are seeing now in the person as the president of this country is not the same persona that we had in the first term of this same president. That tells me one of 2 things. Either from the get-go there was no trust, but because there was the necessity to stick together until the second term has been secured, then the charade was kept up for long enough, for as long as it needed to be kept up. But the second bit could be that there was indeed a falling out. But coming to the headline, now, when the president gets to a place where he so distrusts his deputy that he can publicly say, you know what, trust this man at your own peril, to me is an unfortunate statement. It's unfortunate because they are still tied at the hips for the next 18 months. They still have a presidency to sustain for the next 18 months. There's no option of picking and choosing other dance partners now. We are past that stage. So of necessity, they must find a way of working with each other. How have they done that? Is by the president making sure that, you know what, the deputy presidents are as far away from him as possible, and the president basically is doing everything himself with his cabinet. Is that a sustainable way of doing it? It's the long way around, but it's indeed a way. But on the other hand, One of the things that is peculiar with Kenyans is we love an underdog. You love somebody who looks like they're getting beat down with life, because many of us, I think, feel like we're in the same space. And so what is happening is you have these people who are gravitating towards the deputy president, not necessarily because they even paid much attention to him before, but because they're like, you know what has he done that is so bad that he deserves to be treated like this? Mm-hmm. So come in the victim narrative, because now all of a sudden you look like you're the one who's being beat down. But at the end of the day, what does it say about the president's judge of character? If he could pick somebody who's so completely just untrustworthy to be his deputy, knowing full well, it means that in case anything, God forbid, happens to the president, this would be the person he would be leaving the country to by law. Then it just means that maybe there was a level of falling out rather than a dishonesty. Because if you ask me right now in the country, when you're talking about political space, the space that the deputy president occupies, he does so in his own capacity. He's proved that with his forays into enemy territory, for lack of a better word, because it's deemed enemy territory. He's shown it with how he's like, you know what, nobody owes me anything. In short, just saying, you know what, I'll go for this myself and I'm going to get it. So it's gotten to a place where now he's not even pretending to need the president's endorsement or to even desire it. Okay. He's gotten to a place where he's decided, you know what?
But he painted him as a liar yesterday.
I'll just take a break at this particular point in time. When you come back after the break, of course, we look at your feedback, and also we discuss where the judiciary goes from here as far as the CJ's post is concerned and the ruling that was given over the as we ended last week. That, of course, and we get into the crystal ball as we look at matters economy right here. Don't go too far.